Welcome one more day to an harmony, a new more chance to go deep into our true being, the original being of light, emanated from the primordial source. And since we are already in winter, days are becoming longer, light is somehow conquering darkness. We should see this process as an allegory of how conscience grows in us. And as light grows within, making us cross this valley of darkness, we can become aware of how the original qualities of unconditional love and modified life, pure conscience and blissful serenity, blend with our experience in the world, with our human personality, illumining, purifying, harmonizing, and manifesting what we call the original imprint, the original soul personality. And this is how we become more conscious of certain intuitions, creative thoughts, guidance coming from our true being of light, and also from other beings. They can be light family members, whether they are incarnated in other people or guiding from another dimension. And we can also become aware of souls that get attached to human souls. These in Hebrew wisdom are known as iburs, gestations, which is the way souls avoid reincarnating. They link themselves to another soul in order to purify themselves or to finish a task or simply guide a person. We will see that later. And we should distinguish this from the gestation of our own original being, which forms a new soul. And in order to understand deeper these connections, I'd like to share an experience that I had when I was about 17 years old. I went on holidays with my family, my parents, and my sister. It was on the west coast of Spain, in Galicia. And one day, my mom, my sister, and I went to the beach, which was almost empty, especially because the weather was cloudy. Anyway, the place was beautiful, surrounded by nature. And I love swimming, especially in the sea, so I went swimming and realized that the water was almost pleasant. The Atlantic Ocean is usually so cold that you feel the pain in the body, but that day, as it was cloudy, the contrast was not so strong. So I began to swim with all my might, full of joy. Anyway, I lost my mind completely because I swam so much that I almost reached the coast of North America. And at some point, I actually felt the water was much colder. It was harder to swim, obviously, the depth was greater. And when I stopped, my legs started moving from one side to the other. The undercurrents in the sea were very strong. I had never felt that before in the sea. So I turned back, looked towards the shore, and I realized that it was a thin line. And I got very scared. Where am I? I said. And I began to swim with all my strength towards the shore, but the current was pulling me towards the open sea. It was as if an entire portion of the ocean was moving together. It was very scary. Actually, there was a moment in which I got panic stricken. But at that precise moment, an impulse from deep within me stopped that emotional reaction and said to myself, Fernando, think. It wasn't a voice coming from someone else, but from deep within my true self, which was taking command. And instinctively, I flipped upwards, looking towards the sky, and began swimming towards the shore, pushing with my legs as if I were a frog, using my arms as rowers, like those in a training boat. And little by little I began to overcome the undercurrent, advancing very slowly. Then, at some point, I saw on my right hand side the reference rocks that I should have never passed. And at that moment, I began to feel joy inside myself. And even I started to enjoy this situation because the wind was blowing in the opposite direction, and this generated some marks in the ocean, giving me the impression that I was swimming very fast, that I was like a motor vessel or something like that. And I began to swim joyfully. However, when I was about 100 meters away from the shore, I became very anxious. Obviously, I was afraid and wanted to step on the ground as soon as possible. And even though the water covered my neck, I tried to walk with the tip of my toes on the, on the bottom of the sea. And I approached very slowly the shore. And then, when the water was just covering my knees, I turned around, looking towards the horizon. And in that precise moment, I felt very sad and also ashamed. It was as if someone had slapped me on the face, in part because I had done something without thinking, and I could have caused much suffering to my family if something had happened to me. I realized that I had escaped a situation of likely death, and I just walked with those mixed emotions within me towards my towel. My sister and my mom were lying down on their towels. They didn't realize what had just happened. And I just lay down on my towel. I put a t-shirt on my face. I didn't want to see anyone or see anything, just rest and think about what had just happened. And over the years, I realized that it's precisely in those moments of intense awareness, intense attention, that we get more in contact with our true being, which literally takes command, making us aware of things that we usually don't see. I see that in these occasions, our five senses are fully awake, and we get in touch with the sixth sense, which is an intuition that makes us more intelligent, more precise, stronger. The effort that day was very strong. And in these moments, we also feel what I call integral conscience, which is also a seventh core conscience, as I call it, because it has four qualities, which is a clear mind, precise thinking, intense, sensitive heart, feeling, and harmonized sensation. Actually, that day I was in full harmony with all the elements. I felt the water, the wind, the earth, the fire within me. And all these together work to take me out. They help myself. The four elements collaborated within me and even outside, in spite of the mechanical pull of nature. Now, the lesson is that we must be able to access a deeper degree of attention and awareness, expansive consciousness, in order to get in touch with integral conscience and be more aware of the guidance coming from our true self, but also aware of other types of guidance, such as the one coming from souls that are experiencing Ibur, souls attaching to our own soul in order to evolve themselves or help us evolve or realize something. For instance, there are people who have reported experiences in which they were living extreme conditions of danger, and then they heard voices in their minds helping them to get out of those situations. And they were not their own voices, they were voices from someone else. And in my opinion, these voices in many cases can come from these other Ibur souls. And this process of Ibur, or attached souls, can also explain why some people remember having other lives. In many cases, they are not their own lives, but the lives of the Iburs, the attached souls. And somehow we can say that as there is only one being manifesting through all those of us who have true light and true life, in this sense we can say that we all are living the lives of all the others, even though we have to distinguish the experience line of our own soul from other souls. This is obvious. But in a general sense, we all are living the other lives. And we can experience the lives of others as in this Ibur process. And this is a way to avoid reincarnating from the beginning of a person's life. A soul can simply experience one section of a person's life for just a specific reason. Now, apart from all this, we must be aware of other influences, such as that coming from light family members that are incarnated. There are people that we are destined to meet, but if we are not paying attention, then we miss the point. We miss the chance of meeting those that can help us or inspire us somehow. And there can also be light beings that guide us, and we should be attentive. I remember one occasion when I was about 15 or 16 years old that a humanoid being of light appeared to me in a dream vision, and he made me aware of a wrong behavior that I had at that time. And he told me that I was mature enough to keep behaving that way. This made me feel remorse. I didn't feel scolded or punished, but I realized that I had to change. And in general, all these connections, which are connections of true light, help us be in tune with our essential path of life, realizing that we are in a collective mission, especially those of us who have true light inside. Therefore, the responsibility is greater. As Master Yeshua said, I am the light of the cosmos and you are the light of the cosmos. He didn't say, I am God, worship me. No, you are the light, the life. And when we become aware of this, we have to manifest that truth. Otherwise, we disconnect ourselves because we become more influenced by the dark side. And this dark side can come from within, from our fallen personality, which is actually a collection of characters. And we must understand how they work. They usually don't see reality as it is. They are constantly criticizing or viewing things, seeing things in a negative way. And one of the main characteristics of these false personalities is that they are accusers. In Greek, accuser is diabolos, which is the origin of the word devil. So the devil begins within us. And it's this sort of personality that says, this is bad, that person is this or that. Something which is an illusion because people are not just one thing. They are a collection of characters as well. We cannot say this person is greedy, this person is bad. They have the cruel personality inside, or the grouchy, grumpy personality inside. So it depends on the circumstances. There is no point in judging others or in judging situations. However, our fallen personalities are constantly judging the world negatively. And this opens the door to an incorrect use of language, negative thoughts, negative emotions, and this in turn generate an energetic portal that makes us more influenced by the dark side, even negative entities that are not human. Obviously, many times we get into discussions with other people and this hurt us, but very often those negative situations are triggered by entities that are not human. Very few are aware of this. These entities can be of different kinds. Some of them are Adamic souls that are fallen, but sometimes are wicked jinni, the so-called jinns in the Sufi tradition, for instance. Obviously, not all the jinni are bad. Teachings say some are good and others are bad. That's found even in the Quran. But those who are wicked can whisper evilness in the mind of people, generating self-destructive thoughts, hatred. This is why many people suddenly have a desire to commit suicide or even murder, even though these negative impulses can come from the fallen personality as well. And we must be aware that all these psychic energies, whether they come from non-human beings or other people, can get attached to our own energetic body and eventually to our physical body. And this is when our organs become sick. Many diseases come from these psychic energies that enter our field. Therefore, we must learn to dissolve them. And the first approach is to relax the nervous system and then release those emotional tensions, whether they are felt as anxiety, fears, hatred. There are many negative emotions that we must literally dissolve at will, releasing them into our true light, understanding what's taking place. This is taking responsibility. If we are the light, then we are responsible to do this cleaning inside ourselves. And a very practical way to approach this process of dissolving negative energies is, as I said, relaxing the nervous system, as we did, for instance, in the video Cosmocommunication or in 13 spheres of sensory awareness, even though each one of us has to discover how to do this. Now, if we don't do the cleaning, then we get into trouble. First, because we feel remorse of conscience. When the primordial light in us clashes with lower vibrations, there is a friction. And this friction is an emotional suffering that can make us sick. And on the other hand, true light and life within us get hurt. This is the meaning of the passage, "Wounded was he by our transgressions," in Isaiah 53, I think. And there is another problem, which was actually illustrated by Yeshua. He said that when an impure spirit or psychic energy gets out of a person, if that impure spirit finds the house clean, when the person welcomes that energy back again, then that impure spirit calls 7 that are worse. This is because the first time that psychic energy or impure spirit, dark character, was expelled, But when it was allowed into the house again, the weak points are already exposed. So there are dark intelligences, dark energies that can filter themselves through these weak points. And this is when the person will have trouble in dealing with darkness. Actually, this overwhelming darkness can cut all connection with conscience, and the being of light has to leave. The person remains unprotected, not as a punishment, but as lack of consciousness and conscience. And we must be aware that some dark entities are specialized in noticing weak points in a person and trigger the tests, the situations that are going to make that person catch the bait, so to say. This is the famous evil temptation, which is very real, especially if the person has true light inside. Dark entities know their targets very well, and they take that process as their own war because they hate human beings, they hate light beings, thinking that they are trapped, doomed in their fourth dimensional realm. They think they cannot escape and are destined to destruction, something which is not necessarily the case. Many of them can still access their paradise if they help. There are traditions that told them so, but they are deceived by their own chiefs. Chiefs that in many cases are completely crazy and they cannot change. Actually, some dark beings cannot understand the light. Therefore, they are doomed to destruction. And our connection can also be severed, so we have to be very aware of this. Therefore, we should not work on our own. We cannot work alone, actually, because we get asleep. We need constant reminders, especially from those who are working through the light. And collectively, we are strong. And we should be very aware of all this, especially in the coming 2020, which will be a period of deep tests. Actually, in the 22 archetypes of Hebrew wisdom, the 20th is the final judgment. And in 2020, there will be a judgment of conscience. The chaff will be even more separated from the wheat. We must be aware that 2020 adds up to 40, and 40 were the days and nights spent by Noah in the ark with his family during the so-called deluge, the Mavul, all of which can be seen as the process of soul growth crossing the emotional dark waters. The people of Israel also crossed the Red Sea and they spent 40 days in the desert being tempted by passions and beaten by snakes. And 40 were also the days spent by Yeshua in the tale. He was tempted by the accuser, the adversary, Satan, as well. And this is something that we will experience more intensely in this 2020 onwards. Actually, 2020 opens a global decade of transformation, especially because of certain material changes. There will be spectacular technological changes, weather changes, social planetary changes on all levels, and this will be very challenging for us. So we must also be aware that 40 adds up to 4. 4 were the aspects of conscience, clear vision, precise thought, tender heart, intense heart, full of vitality, and also harmonious sensations, but also the four pillars of our true being. And with these four pillars, I wish you have an harmonious end of cycle and beginning of the following, developing onwards. And until the next time, blessings of unconditional love, unmodified pure life, intense conscience, and blissful serenity.